We're gonna talk about things going on in the world around us. This time, my Spider-Man Homecoming review. And yeah, there's not much to talk about, honestly. But I will say, if you haven't seen it yet, there are spoilers ahead, so be aware and go away and come back after you've seen it. Go see it. It's worth the ticket price. It's a good time. It's a good time. So here's an order of operations for this video, what I like, what I didn't like, and then how this ties into Marvel Studios. To preface this, Marvel Studios it's not a Marvel Studios film, it's a Sony film, but it is in the Marvel Studios universe. It was a big risk Kevin Feige allowed to happen to save Spider-Man from Sony's mistakes, and yeah, it does. It fixes everything. Andrew Garfield is no longer even a thought in our mind because Tom Holland is solidified as Peter Parker. Did it perfectly, did it awesome, did a very good job. And to also shape the story for you, a lot of reviewers are saying it's like a John Hughes film. Yes, absolutely. If you guys don't know who John Hughes is, he's the guy who did Home Alone, he's the guy who did Breakfast Club. He did a lot of character-driven, simple stories. Most of his stories are coming-of-age stories, and that's what this absolutely is. Tom Holland does an amazing portrayal as Peter Parker, and it's an amazing story of Peter Parker discovering what it means to be Spider-Man. And it's completely different from the Tobey Maguire and the Andrew Garfields. None of the story points are the same, and it's fantastic. It feels fresh. It doesn't feel like a Marvel Studios film, but it still has a lot of elements that work great for superhero films and coming-of-age stories. As far as what I liked, to get deeper into this, Tom Holland's portrayal, if you couldn't tell yet, I think it was perfect. Not only for Spider-Man, but also for Peter Parker. He did a fantastic job. He deserves major kudos for that. Michael Keaton as the villain, fantastic job. In fact, it was the first time I've been scared by, I've been fearful of a villain in a long time. I wasn't scared even of the Joker and Suicide Squad. I think I haven't been this scared of a character since the Joker in The Dark Knight. Even Loki in Thor, I wasn't this intimidated by. And that's partly because of Michael Keaton's age compared to Peter Parker's age. And spoiler alert, there's a fantastic twist in the second act that makes this story amazing. If Spider-Man wasn't amazing enough, the second act works fantastically for this movie. And in terms of other things I liked, there were a lot of tropes that were subverted in this movie. For example, Flash Thompson is an Indian guy. Flash Thompson is normally a blonde-haired, buff, Biff-type character, Biff from Back to the Future. And in this iteration, he's an Indian guy who's kind of meek himself, so it doesn't make sense. But he may grow a bit before the Venom movie, we'll see. Other things that worked great for this movie, the comedy is very funny, like Marvel Studios films tend to be. This one a little different in the comedy, but it worked out nicely. One of the funny comedic elements that kept returning was it was in a high school and they had television news announcements, and they were terrible anchors, and the chroma key kept turning on and off, and it was a funny element because it's like we all, especially if you're in high school now, can totally relate to that. I'm not in high school now. It's been 11 years. But yeah, let's just get into what I didn't like then, because it's not much at all. I didn't like, but I think one thing that this story had was a weak third act. It just felt cumbersome to get through because I just felt like there wasn't enough setup for a payoff. Like the Shocker came out of nowhere, and it was like, how did he know Peter Parker was there? If Michael Keaton's character didn't even know who Peter Parker was till like 5 minutes ago. So it was a weird thing. Yeah, it just felt like, okay, if this government agency is in charge of all of these things, and if the Sokovia Accords happened recently, why would this plane be flying not escorted through the skies of New York with all this stuff? It didn't make any sense. There weren't even pilots in that plane, in that cockpit, to prevent the Vulture from coming in and trying to steal all that stuff. So it didn't make any sense at all. Least favorite thing about what happened in the movie is the very end of the movie, when Sony decides to bring Gwyneth Paltrow back and have Robert Downey Jr. propose to her. Well, Tony Stark proposed to Pepper Potts, rather. And it's like, well, Kevin Feige, how did you let that happen? They were supposed to be broken up with. I was hoping Pepper Potts would end up like Natalie Portman, Jane Foster, and just we'll never see her again. These romantic interests who hardly influence the character decisions, other than like, because at the end of Iron Man 3, he's blowing up all his suits, and then Civil War, they're broken up and he's back to the action, and now in Homecoming he's proposing to her. What? This is supposedly... Okay, we'll get into the Marvel stuff. This is a good transition. This is supposedly only 2 months after Civil War. You're saying within 2 months they went from being broken up with to getting engaged? What the heck, Marvel? What the heck, Sony? What are you guys doing? Other things, as I mentioned, it's only 2 months from after Civil War. That means everything that takes place in Spider-Man Homecoming takes place before Doctor Strange, which also means it takes place a long time before Thor 2, and a long time before Infinity War, because the beginning of Doctor Strange happens during Civil War, and then it's like 6 months before Stephen Strange gets his hands healed and is able to use his powers. So this is like 8 months before the end of Doctor Strange, Spider-Man Homecoming. So if you watch Spider-Man Homecoming and you're a little confused as the timeline, that'll help you out. It means Peter Parker, before you see him again, will have been Spider-Man and not an Avenger yet for like a year of that. And yet, at the point you're seeing him as Spider-Man here, he's only been Spider-Man for like 3 months. So that ties in nicely. Aside from Pepper Potts, there's nothing else that changes for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, I mean, also aside from Peter Parker's character development. But nothing else changes for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Everything that ties in are just fun little references. The Captain America stuff was funny, and Hannibal Buress, the PE teacher, said though too, like, oh, I guess he's a war criminal now. So it goes to show you that Captain America's a war criminal now, but we knew that at the end of Civil War. Tony Stark didn't change at all, other than proposing to Pepper Potts all of a sudden at the end, and it just seems so inconsequential. It's not even. It just feels like no weight to it. So I want to watch it again. I'll probably see it again. I hope you see it too. If I were to grade it, I'd give it a B+. Catch me on the next one, guys, and I'll see you guys later.